Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to In Lieu the Pew. Thank you for joining us tonight. I already see Sandy saying aloha. Aloha back, Sandy. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight on our, what is this, season 2, episode 16, which should be a very interesting episode tonight. In a little bit, we'll have some of our confirmation students dropping some of their questions on us. Let me bring in my co-host. Where are you, Katie? I know you're out there in the middle of the ocean somewhere. There you are.
I'm floating out here in the middle of the ocean. Yes.
In the middle of the ocean. Haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I know. I was like, wait, when is the last time we saw each other? And it was 2 weeks
like
ago.
In person?
In person.
Was it
It was 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago you weren't here from the Pew. Yeah.
I know. I'm not sure of my schedule either, but I'll be back in. But I said I will see you the next in Lieu the Pew. We're doing live and in person in Las Vegas.
From Las Vegas, yeah. And it's just coincidence, people. It's just coincidence. I'm going to visit my brother. So you've got a conference.
Conference, yeah. So, yes, I'm going and representing the state of Hawaii. So I will be wearing my aloha style dresses.
Oh, very good.
And so some of the things that I'm doing for the coaching in the real estate community. So I'm going to be representing the Aloha State while I'm there. And yeah, just I think you had sent out like, hey, these are the dates that we're looking for the next in Lieu of the Pew. And you're like, and this week I'll be at my brother's place in Las Vegas. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the week I'm going to be at a convention in Las Vegas. Like, that's awesome. So
well, it works out. It works out. We got to see a show or do dinner or something for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I'm hoping to do, to tell you honestly, is you know a friend of mine, Nikita, who does theater, right? It's looking like he's going to get to be on Broadway, and I want to find an outfit appropriate to wear for his Broadway opening.
We have to go shopping. We have to go to Stitch.
And how would you have a friend who's going to have a lead role, title role in a Broadway show?
Right. You have to have the appropriate outfit for the appropriate pictures, and maybe you get on the red carpet.
Thinking about it though, just for everybody watching. So if you're new to Lieu the Pew, here's the scoop. We started this back in April of 2020, about a month into the whole shelter-in-place thing, just so we wouldn't get bored. Chance to connect with people, with you guys watching. Drop in your questions in chat or your comments in chat. We love that. We love it to be interactive. Ask Katie to help out, and she's been dynamite all the way through. So
is that the word we're using, like explosive?
Explosive. But so in addition to, if you're on Facebook watching us, you can drop your questions in the chat. If you're on YouTube, we have the comments turned off because there was some trolling that was happening. But you can hashtag your comments or questions on Twitter just with In Lieu of the Pew, hashtag In Lieu of the Pew, and I am watching for those things right here. Or you can just at FR Mark Wiesner, Father Mark Wiesner, and I'll get that stuff too. Hey Ruth, good to see you. But so there we are. So thank you for joining us for In Lieu of the Pew this evening. How have you been?
Well, I'm laughing because me, how I've been, and you can ask anybody who would like to comment from Facebook. But my condo in Honolulu faces out to the Pacific Ocean, and the lighting is great, but like the sun is starting to, getting in this part of the planet, and so like my knees are getting warm from the sun coming through the slider. So I'm like, we're gonna see how long this lasts. I'm like, nope, it's too hot. And if I suddenly turn off, if you suddenly see me turn off my camera, I gave up, and it was just too warm. So, or my computer decides to like, nope, too warm, we're done. So I'm like,
well, I'm looking forward to your answers to the kids' questions tonight, to the conference team's question.
We got a few ahead of time. You shared with me a few ahead of time, and they're awesome. They're so good. And actually, you know what? I've got to find. My son actually gave me a couple, so I've got to.
Really?
I realized they're on the counter behind me, so I'll turn my camera off in a minute and go grab them once we get started on the questions. But yes, but I wanted to talk to you about, because I know this is your favorite time of the year. I mean, outside of the high holidays, right?
There's so much going on now.
Right, but I think one of your favorite things about this, and what inspired me, was your silent retreat. That this is usually the time of the year where you do, and I always thought you were crazy, right? Like you're gonna go do what for a week? And now I'm a convert, so I'm the worst.
I'm going next week. I usually try to go in November, but my spiritual director wasn't available in November, so I'm going next week. I'm going to do Sunday morning, do an 8 o'clock morning mass, and then I'll probably stick around to like greet everybody who's watching online at the 10 o'clock mass. But by 10:15, I should be heading for the retreat house in Southern California.
Yay!
5.5, 6 days of silence.
So, wow. Yeah. And how many days do you sleep straight? Pretty close.
Usually, I would say I sleep like 36 of the first 48 hours. I keep saying I can't possibly still be tired. It's like it's amazing. It's amazing when I come to that stop. But then I think I've told you it's very cool, because at some point, eventually my body is rested. And then at some point, all the chatter in my brain shuts off. And so I'm awake but quiet, and I can enter into God's presence, or maybe perceive God in a different way than I can in a normal sort of while the year is chugging along. So it's always nice to have that before we get into Advent and before we get into the liturgical year and everything.
Yeah. So this is your favorite time of year because there's lots going on. The weather changing. It's the playoffs for baseball.
Halloween, Thanksgiving, baseball, getting ready for Christmas, New Year. There's so much happening this time of year. It's great. But I get the retreat.
And your silent retreat is usually this time of year, so that's all the more reason to encourage that.
It'll be very good.
Well, and I think it's funny. You talked about you hear God in a different way, but that was what inspired me to go on a silent retreat. Was one, listening to you and frankly not believing you that it was a good thing to do. It was like, really? Like, you're gonna go what? I didn't really get it.
And then it was
and then somebody said to me, it's amazing what you hear when the noise stops. Yeah. And it was like, oh, I didn't think about it like that way. And I was like, you mean the noise do stop? Like, what? The noises in my head eventually stop, and it is amazing. It was
well, the other day in my prayer, next to my Bible on my nightstand, I have I think I've showed you that book, Love Letters from God.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. And I felt moved to open that book. And I mean, I've read the whole thing a couple times, and I opened it, and the page it opened to was from an Eastern mystic named Kabir. And it was 2 lines. It said, he wrote, I felt in need of a great pilgrimage. So I sat still for 3 days and God came to me.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I know what's going on. Matter of fact, so when I go away on my retreat, I always post, people know. But I'm actually going to post a picture of, I've told you that there's this bench there by a little waterfall. And if I sit there long enough, and sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 3 or 4 days, God always shows on that bench. He always pops in next to me.
Wow.
And then it gets amazing. So
and we've inspired somebody else. So I have another friend of mine that leaves this weekend as well to a silent retreat, go to the same house that I went to. So the ripple effect is growing.
That's great. That's great. There's something about that really feeds you in a way that nothing else does. It's really, really good. I'm glad you went and tried it. I'm very excited to go away myself. So
I know. I'm quite envious. So okay, what else? I have a few questions for you. All right. So I guess we talked about this time of year in baseball. So I'm not a Dodger fan, but that was an amazing game yesterday. Like obviously I'm not a Dodger fan.
I didn't see it. I had finance council last night.
Well, if you watch the highlights,
the night before, but
it was a good game. It was, but my
favorite part
was in the highlights. ESPN was showing all the Dodger fans leaving at the top of the 8th inning.
Oh, right? Yeah. I did see that on the news. Yeah.
That was pretty funny. But it is an exciting time of year if you're a baseball fan to see how, all the different.
And actually, it's going to be one of the challenges is while I'm on silent retreat, the World Series starts.
That's okay. The World Series is 7 games. You're not going to, the first game or 2 is not a big deal anyway. So. It'll be fine. You'll be fine.
It'll be fine. I'll be
fine. All right. So I know you did a video about I put map, and of course now I don't remember what it is.
Mission alignment process. What is that we talked about for an entire hour with Mary Fair?
I was like, that's the thing that Mary's doing, and I have map down, but I'm like, it stands for something. I knew the P was process. Thank you, Michael.
It's good to have good backup, isn't it? You need the right people.
Michael! Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. He's totally shaking his head at me, isn't he? He's completely
Have you done your survey yet? Have you done the survey yet?
I haven't gotten a survey.
Should we just call this episode over now? Okay, you see that link you just put up there?
Yes.
Or if you just go to CatholicPresident.org. There's a 10-15 minute survey for every parishioner 16 years or older to do. Mary Fair talked about that too. But we're off to a great start. As of 2 days ago, we had almost 270 people have done it already for us. So we're probably pushing 300 at this point. So it's really, we're excited about it. It's going well. And I already know the MAP Commission downtown has heard about our video and what we've done to try to promote it. So very excited about it. So anybody watch, if you haven't done it yet, please go to the website and take a look at that survey. There's a big red button that says "Take Survey," and
that's in the video. That's in the video that you sent.
The video was to encourage people to take the survey.
And was the link in there?
If you go to our webpage, at the very top, it's got this, and it just says learn more. You click on it and then it pops right up, take the survey, as well as a flock note I wrote, as well as the video I did. There's a whole page.
So it's in a flock note you wrote that I can just go to one of your flock notes and click the button?
Or you can look at, or it's on the webpage.
Okay.
Or it was on my Facebook
I'm
page.
just saying that, like, for me, email is a nice to-do list for me. Like, oh yeah, I got to do that. So if it's in the flock note from you, I will find it and I will go and look. So
awesome.
But
thank you.
I'm just saying, if there was an email that said, take your map survey, and that's all that was in it, that would be really nice for me.
I think there was, wasn't there, Michael? Yeah, there was. Okay,
I'll find it. I'll find it.
I know you're very busy doing things like going out to dinner,
I am
equipping your apartment, and sitting on the beach. So
yes. Well, yeah, I'm working from, I said 2 days last week. I got up at 4 a.m. because I had 4:30 a.m. meetings that were Central Time Zone. So
yeah,
and then I work through Hawaii hours, right? So it's it's interesting. So yes, I get behind on email, I will admit. So I only have 2,500 unread emails in my inbox, so it's should be fine.
Yeah. Well, if you're curious, it's also pinned at the top of the parish Facebook page.
All right, I'm making a note. See, I'm making a note. Survey, it's right there.
Yeah.
So
yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and then I know it's a month ago, we talked about starting this Missionary of Mercy Fund. And yes. How is that going? I know you have formally got it set up with the diocese and all that good stuff. So
actually not yet. So I haven't really pursued it or pushed it far yet, because we contacted the diocese about, okay, so we'll have this money coming in specifically for Missionary of Mercy work. Where should we put it? What should we do with it? They reached out to the priest who is doing this out of Lexington, Kentucky, and he was connecting them with the guy in his parish who runs the money for them. And that's the last I heard. But I have got probably about $2,200 in donations so far to it. So it's a good start once we figure out how to run the money correctly through the books and everything. So, and then we'll talk a little more about that and what we might be able to do with that.
And have you started? Well, maybe this is something on your retreat about, like, the whole magic wand kind of thing, the Harry Potter kind of thing of
what things I can do. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you like to do? Yes. So that's awesome.
Oh, I haven't given it a lot of thought. I mean, until I get a go from the diocese, it's gonna be hard to do anything. But and there's just been so much with the map process and trying to get that all up. And all honesty, I know you've been away for like 3 weeks, but everything's firing up again. It's like everything's getting rolling, and of course this time of year we got All Saints Day, All Souls Day. We got our Mass of Remembrance coming up. We're planning Advent. We're planning Christmas masses. So there's plenty of stuff on my desk that needs attention, as opposed to my trying to create stuff to do. So, yeah.
You have time on your retreat with a notebook and a pencil.
Yes, to sleep quietly. So.
Sleep quietly.
And yeah. So here's the latest. We have 324 people who've taken the survey. That's 12% of the number of people who were coming to Mass before the pandemic started. They say normally only about 20% of people participate. I think we're going to blow right through the 20%. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
So thank you to everybody who's done that so far. And if you haven't, go. Most people tell me it takes 10 minutes. It's pretty cool.
10 minutes?
10 minutes. Yes, 10 minutes. But as I said to Pastor Counts the other night, when we get the information in from that survey, I suspect on our end, we're going to have more questions about the information we're given, and we'll probably create our own follow-up survey to it specific to our parish. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So are we going to get the results just for the parish?
Yes, we'll get just parish results. We'll also get diocesan results, but I'll definitely share the parish results with the parish, and maybe the diocesan results, just see where we stand in terms of how we are compared to other parts of the diocese. So could be very interesting. In any case, there's a lot of questions coming at us. Do you have any?
I was like, we usually kind of chat for a while, but yes, let's do that. Who else do we have coming on today?
Well, I was going to say there's a whole lot of coming on today. Joanne says the map survey is very user friendly. Only takes about 10 minutes to complete. Thank you, Joanne. I'm glad you've done it. Joanne. And Michael put that up there too. But so do you have any more questions for me, Katie, before we move on?
Probably, but not right this second.
They'll come up as we move through the night, huh?
Of course.
All right. Well, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm dying. These questions are so excited.
Have you been studying your theology all week?
Well, the fact that I'm even reading the Bible is a miracle in modern times. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you.
Yeah.
So I was asked in part of an online networking group. We had a break, and then it came back, and I was asked to be the energizer to get people excited, to build up the energy. I know, weird that I would be that. And I ended up having them have quiet and meditation and get into certain sort of yoga-like poses to like be your hands really big out like this. We want to get energized, right? And then here, if you want to feel strong, right? Like the Superman, Wonder Woman kind of thing. And I was like, what is happening to me? Right? Like this, all right, have this mind and deep breaths and, getting your head in the right space. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And then, I'm reading the Bible in a year and this is all just tragic.
All good. It's all good. It's all good.
And I did register for the church, even though it was a manual process. I'm still registered in Honolulu now. So
awesome. Good. Very good. All right. Well, shall we?
We shall. No, I'm dying to get to these questions. These are great.
Where's Lynn T and our confirmation students? Hey. How are you? Good to see you guys.
Yeah. So there's six teens here with me.
Right.
They're kind of around.
Awesome.
Okay.
You locked up. All right. Yeah. And you told me that they're going to ask questions that aren't their own questions, but questions from other teams.
That is right. So they're asking, some of them they may have asked, but we're not going to say which teen asked. That way we keep it all anonymous. And I did get over 200 questions.
Holy moly.
We have more than enough, but I only printed out like 40 for tonight.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Yeah. So you're saying we may need, depending on how this goes, we need to do this again. Yeah. So I figured, when it comes to somebody, the pastor, whatever needs to be asked can be asked. I would just say, if it's like too personal, I don't want to answer it, maybe I won't. And if I don't have an answer, I can probably find an answer that I can get to you, like maybe on the next In Lieu of the Pew or something along those lines. So, but happy to field whatever there is. And I think I'm going to try to not talk too much tonight, but sometimes when it comes to these sorts of things, you need to get background and context and stuff to be able to make sense out of the answer. So the answer doesn't sound too like just flippant. You know what I'm saying? So, but we'll do what we can. So, all right, start with an easy one. Softball it.
Oh, well, I'll start with one that I'm sure will stump you.
Okay.
What is my favorite song to sing at Mass?
Your favorite song to sing at Mass? If you say This Little Light of Mine, we're going to have a problem.
No.
I'm not a big fan of that.
But it is now.
Oh, for sure.
Well, thanks for joining us, Lindsay. Bye. Your favorite song to sing at Mass? Is it one of the songs you do at the 6 o'clock youth Mass?
Yes, they sing it at the 6 o'clock youth Mass.
God, there's so many good ones there. What is it?
It's The Blessing.
Very good. That's a great song.
Stumped the pastor. Our job is done. Good job, kids.
That's a great song. Yeah. That's a really good one.
I think
it may even be part of the Christmas concert that I was going to do.
That would be awesome. All right, I'm going to bring the first teen up. His name is Leslie. Come on.
Hey, Leslie.
Hello, Father Mark. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me, I guess.
Good to see you. So you guys are all second-year confirmation, right?
Yeah, we're
awesome.
second year. Okay, so the first question is being gay bad? Like the whole LGBTQ community, are there good people there? Are they really sinners?
Okay, we'll start with this. Being gay or LGBTQ does not automatically make you a bad person. Every single person in the world is a sinner, right? We've all managed to not live perfect lives and how God would want us to live. So that's sort of like, yes, if you're a human being, you have that issue that you have to deal with. But having an orientation that's other than heterosexual does not automatically make you a bad person. Not at all. And the church wouldn't want you to think that. The church doesn't teach that. The church doesn't believe that. It believes there are certain challenges to that lifestyle, but the orientation does not make you bad or evil or anything like that at all. I know in every parish I've been at, we've had numerous people who are gay or who are transgender or who are bisexual who participate in the life of the church, who strive for holiness in their life, who live lives of prayer, who participate in ministry, and that's all beautiful and wonderful. And there's a parish in San Francisco, Holy Redeemer Parish, which is primarily a parish that ministers to the gay community. So no, it does not make you bad.
Okay,
so don't let anybody tell you that, because I think what you may have heard, because this happens all the time, is the church, when she writes documents and considers issues and moral things and spends a lot of time thinking, praying. Usually documents take years and years and years and years to write, and they're very subtle and very precise in the language they use, because they are complicated issues and issues that you want to treat very well and very respectfully. And then someone who's never read the document says, oh, I heard the church thinks all gay people are bad. And then that becomes what everybody thinks, because it's much easier to have a 10 to 20 second, bullet point, as opposed to really exploring and reading what the church says about issues like this. So, but thank you for starting with that question right away. People need to know that if you're gay, that does not make you bad. That does not make you evil.
Yeah, that was a really popular question. We all wanted to know too.
I'm sure. Because I know, especially right now, the questions about sexual orientation are much more prominent than they were, say, like when I was growing up or when Katie was growing up. And I've been a priest for over 26 years. And I would say probably in the last 10 years, well, in the first 16, I probably never had a question about it. But in the last 10 years, it comes from students, it comes from parents, it comes from grandparents. And I've even had those conversations with kids who are like 10 or 12 who are already beginning to talk about stuff that really, I wasn't even thinking about till I was like off to college, I think, it wasn't a topic of conversation, and it is very much now. So I'm sure it was a very, very popular question in the class. Yeah. But thank you for asking it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So the second question was Jesus good all the time? Like, how is he perfect? Like, if he was like the human form of God and we were made in God's image, why aren't we better people?
That's an awesome question. Why aren't we better people? Yeah, good. Do you want to take that one, Katie? Why aren't we better people?
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually like that Jesus had tantrums every once in a while, documented in the Bible, actual tantrums. It makes me feel better when I have a tantrum. Like, okay, and then you recover, right? And so, but I think it's, that it was God came in human form and had the human experience and got angry and frustrated. Yeah,
there's a zillion ways to go with this question. It's so rich and so beautiful. So yeah, we do believe that Jesus was God incarnate, and our theology holds that he was fully human and fully divine. Now, how does that work? You can talk about that in any way you want, as long as you keep those two things, those two parameters, fully human and fully divine. And as fully divine, as God's only son, his will always lined up with God's will. And that's why he was without sin. Now, interesting, as Katie points out, he did get angry, right? He has tantrums in the temple or wherever, which is really good for us to know, because so often we immediately equate, I'm angry, it must be a sin. But Jesus was without sin and he still got angry. So it's a valid human emotional experience to get angry. A lot of the time the question is the anger justifiable, and what are you doing with the anger, right? And how, so we hold that he was sinless because his will was always in line with God's will. Why aren't we better people? Because we don't line our will up with God's will. That becomes the issue. Our own free will, so often we as human beings think, I know what's better for me, I know what's going to make me happy, I know what I would prefer, and we pursue things that are not holy things. We choose to go after things and treat each other in ways that aren't holy, that aren't Christ-like, And so we end up not being people as good as Jesus was. The nice part is his whole point in coming was to help, was to forgive all those moments when we make the wrong choices, and to reunite us with God, to reestablish our relationship with God so we can be friends of God. And God loves to work with us over our lives in helping us to figure out how we can line our life up much more with the way that he would want us to live it. That's an awesome question. Why aren't we better people? That's something that, I mean, you spend a lot of time. I mean, that's a whole retreat. Let me take that for 5.5 days assignments and come back with an answer. You know, why aren't we better people?
Well, it's
It
I was
usually
just,
is, yeah.
You and I were talking about the book of Sirach the other day, right?
Yeah.
And how that it's a father writing to his son about kind of how to live your life. And Leslie, one of that question was even a little bit answered in that. And I cannot believe I'm quoting the Bible. But
Go, Katie, go. Go, Katie, go.
And it talks about that often when we sin, we think it's a personal sin, that it's not going to bother anybody, that this is just my thing. This is mine. This doesn't affect anybody else. I know it's not right, but God sees all things. God shines a light on everything. And so it's, if we're in alignment with where we know God wants us to be, we become better people. And when we choose the sometimes the human private, this is a private sin, it's not really hurting anybody, that's when we often make those bad choices that do end up hurting people and making those bad choices. That book is amazing.
Point. Yeah, no, that's an awesome point, because someone said to me that even I might have been a spiritual director, but even the most private sin, at the very least, what it does is it lets down the Christian community, the community of which you are a part, that you were baptized into. It, even if it's completely private and unknown, somehow you haven't lived up to what we hope you would be living up to, and that saddens us. So, yeah. A good question. Wow, rich questions right from the top.
Great questions.
So much for softballing it, right?
Yeah, very.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Thanks.
So the next question is:
Bring it.
If God is so loving and powerful, why did he have to send his only son to die for us? How come he didn't figure out a way to do this without Jesus suffering?
Yeah, awesome question. Because you're right. God is all powerful. God is all creative. God, I think, and this is me talking, I think that God could have chosen any way he wanted to choose to bring about redemption to the world, to reconcile us to himself, to reestablish our friendship. However, I think he chose the way that would most profoundly reveal for us how much he loved us. The choice to be willing to die for someone, to demonstrate the depth of your love and commitment to the relationship. I'm not sure that any other way would have demonstrated that as powerfully or as beautifully as his willingness to go to the cross, to show us how much he loved us, that he was willing to take that on. But yeah, so I mean, at some point, if you will, I mean, again, we're talking about God, so human language always begins to fall a little bit short of things. But at some point, he made that choice. I'm going to do this to drive home the point that you are so important to me that I would rather die than have to live without you. And so that's what I'm going to show you. Yeah.
That would make sense, because Jesus was also like a human figure for them. So
yeah, and I've said this to a lot of wedding couples I've worked with, that love, when it's real, always involves a level of self-sacrifice. Love, when it's real, always involves putting yourself aside for the betterment of the other, for the good of the other, seeking the best for the other. And God showed that to the nth degree in the passion and death of his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next question is, were others asked to have Jesus before Mary?
We don't know, but the answer from our theology or our understanding is basically no. that God knew who to ask, and that Mary, by virtue of how she had lived her life, was the person who would say yes, and she did. That God knew who to go to for that, and pick the right woman to do that. I think Mary was an incredibly, was a young, strong woman with, she was visionary. She was open to letting God upset maybe what she had planned for her life or where her life was going. And really, I mean, her ability to say yes to whatever God asked of her, and despite not knowing where that was going to go or what was going to happen with that, what does it mean to give birth to the Son of God? And who would know, right? But she was willing to trust God with that, to say yes, and then ride that yes out to wherever it took her. Yeah, God knew who to ask for that. That's for sure. Yeah, Katie.
So you did a homily about this in December of last year, and I wrote it. I have it on my phone, and every day it pops up, and it says it's one of my daily prayers. I do 3 of them, and one of them is, "I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be done to me according to your will."
Yeah.
And it's just something that, in choosing, Mary, I said, may have had other plans. Like, I have these other things that I want to do, but all right. And to me, it's a reminder to be open, to be willing to say yes, willing to see what is your will and what does that look like. And it may not be the thing I'm most excited about doing, but sometimes it's a thing that hits you over the head like a baseball bat too. And just Leslie, I think there's moments we can learn in our own life where something's presented to you, and your gut says, I really could help. I really know I could make a difference. I know that God has blessed me with the gift to help. And if I just stay here and don't help, that's God is setting out his will, telling me where I can make a mark. And I've had that experience a couple weeks ago, and I was like, literally there in church going, all right, I'll go.
Well, and if you don't, you're not true to yourself. You're not true to who God made you to be. I mean, one of the reasons he chose Mary was because Mary, being true to herself, if she had said no, she would not have been who she is, who she was, and so she was true to herself in answering that call of God in her life, as is any of us when we're true to our truest self. When God asks something of us, like you say, there are moments where you're like, I don't want to do this, but I know I need to. I know I'm the person to do this, right?
I have to do this. Yeah. I know I have to do this. Okay. Yeah. All right. Here we go.
Been there. Yeah. Good. Is that helpful, Leslie?
Yeah, it helps. It made me understand, because Mother Mary was, pure. So, they chose her and she said yes. She accepted God. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have no record anywhere of any kind of God asking someone else and them saying, "Oh, I'll take a bye on that." We don't. Thanks for asking God, but
awesome. No.
Come back in a week or two. Let me think about this.
Yeah. About it. Yeah. That's a maybe.
That would be really awkward. Once they found out it was the chosen one. Oh, dang it! I gave up a good offer.
Shoot, I had that opportunity. I didn't take it. Gabriel came to me first.
Yeah.
But I said no.
I said no. Right. Like all the companies who said no to Apple.
That's funny. Exactly. Yeah. So cool. All right. So what? That's 4 out of 40. We're moving right along.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna bring Ashley up now. But
thank you, Leslie. You're awesome.
I think we just came up with a Saturday Night Live skit of Angel Gabriel coming down and asking All right, come on up, Ashley.
You totally need to send that to the writers at SNL. That is
just my goodness.
Hello.
Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Ooh,
good. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for answering all these questions. I'm sure it means so much to all confirmation teams and everybody else who has all these questions. So
yes,
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. So first question I have.
Real fast.
Huh?
Kim is watching. Kim used to be our youth minister, our middle school minister, and she's on watching us right now. We miss you too, Kim. Yay! All right, just want to announce that she's there. That's awesome that you're watching, Kim, from Florida. All right, Ashley, to your questions.
Okay, so first question is about Noah's Ark. I think we can all agree that Noah's Ark is a very impressive story, and I don't think I can even build anything like that. I can't even build an IKEA dresser, let alone fit 2 of every animal on a giant ark that will last a giant flood. Yep. And also, not only that, but how was Noah able to get every single animal, 2 of every single animal? I have a dog myself, and when he runs outside, I could chase the guy for like a whole mile and he won't come back inside. So how did he get all these animals and build an ark that was durable enough to last this giant flood?
Yeah, sure. Okay, great question. All right, so here's where we start talking about when you look at Scripture. What are we looking at? And Scripture is made up of a lot of different types of literary genres. That is to say, there's some historical fact in it, but there are parables, and there are songs, and there are poems. There are all kinds of different literary genre there, right? And every kind of literary genre can only give you the information it's able to give you. I mean, if you read everything literally, you can run into some problems. Like I say, if there was an archaeologist 1,000 years from now who found an old newspaper and tried to read it literally without knowing what it's saying, and he read the headline, "Giants Beat Padres," what would he think? That enormous human beings pummeled some Franciscan friars or something, right? We know the context. We know what we're talking about. We know we're talking about baseball and the Giants beat the Padres. So we get that. So there are moments when I think we look at the Scripture, especially the stories like Noah's Ark, which was written, 6,000 or 8,000 years ago on the other side of the world. They were trying to capture for us a truth. There's an old line about everything in Scripture is true, and some of it even happened. So you are welcome to believe that literally Noah built an ark that measured X number of cubits by S number of cubits by X number of cubits, and he managed to go around the world and get 2 of every creature and get them on the ark. You can believe that if you want to believe that literally. When you start to look around at other cultures at that time too, other cultures had stories about great floods that hit the world. The one that comes right to mind is something called Gilgamesh, which is about a great flood that comes to the world. So did Noah's Ark happen literally? But is there a truth in the story that is embedded in a cultural story, in cultural language? Is there a truth that we can pick up and say, that truth from that story applies in every age, in every generation, across every culture, if you just find what that truth is? And the truth is that God doesn't like sin. God wipes it out. God gives us a new start. For us, the story very much becomes more than a literal story that Noah managed to save penguins in the Antarctica, right? And walruses, things that were nowhere near him in where he lived. The story becomes for us a prefigurement of baptism, where water makes an end to evil and gives you a new beginning. That's where we see it coming into play, that God's planting that story to teach us and begin to prepare us for what it is he does for us through that great sacrament of baptism. So you're right. I mean, I have a hard time believing that Noah made it to Australia to get kangaroos and put them on the ark there in the Middle East, especially since you don't find kangaroos in the Middle East, So that does become a real difficulty if you want to read it literally. Again, you can if that's your choice, but there are some real challenges with that. But is it true all the same? Is there a truth in that story that speaks to us? Yes, there is. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of stories in the Bible too where you can't you can't exactly take every single detail literally, because it's kind of like, how does that happen? Like people for living for hundreds of years, you're kind of like, is that really reasonable? It's like there's some metaphor in there, which definitely makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Right. Well, the people living hundreds and hundreds of years, the idea was in the ancient world, the idea of a blessing, like God blessing you, blessings always led to life. So to say you were 900 years old meant that you were profoundly blessed because you had a lot of life, right? So the number of years indicates that you were greatly blessed, so you had a lot of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's talking to us about that.
And didn't they count different? I mean, I think they counted differently. And I mean, it's how we count years and measure life is different than it was thousands of years ago, right? I mean, if you even look, in our traditional history books and how things were measured and time measured, I mean, it's not exactly the same, right? So it's
calendar switched up, all that, So
of course,
cool.
That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, for my next question, what happens when we die? Do we keep our thoughts and memories? I guess just like right after we die, like what exactly happens? Like that's always an interesting thing.
I haven't had the experience myself, so I can't speak from experience. But I actually do know people who have had like the near-death experience, or who were sort of seeing who I'm thinking people who have been with them when they've like sort of died, but then they're brought back. And my take would be that yes, you don't lose who you are when you die. That your soul, which animates you and makes you who you are, that those things that make you who you are, your memories, your thoughts, go with you, stay with you. I mean, you're still a unique individual that God has created. We believe that one day in the resurrection, soul and body are back together again, right? So, or the body's recreated, but resurrected, whatever that reality is. So I don't think you lose your identity. I don't think you lose your. In fact, even in the Book of Revelation, they talk about how, at the final judgment or whatever, everyone's going to receive a new name that's going to reveal truly who they are and all this. So I don't think we lose our identity. I don't think we lose our individuality at all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that answer.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. For my next question, so there are many religions around the world. We know this. Like there are many different religions, and they also fall into different categories, like believing in one God, believing in multiple gods. And there's like a whole list of examples right here. But the question is, how do we know that we're following the right religion? Because every religion thinks that they are believing the right thing. So how do we know that we are correct?
Sure. First, I want to say that when it comes to other religions, both other Christian denominations and other denominations that are not Christian, our church makes room for them and acknowledges that we have things we can learn from them, and acknowledges that God is reaching out to them in a way that God's Spirit is free to move. That what we believe we have as the fullest revelation needed for salvation, that God's Spirit can move beyond that as it needs to. God is not bound by just what we have. But what we have that we rely upon is what we call Apostolic Tradition. That is to say that at the resurrection, there were those apostles who saw Jesus, encountered the risen Jesus, and it changed their life forever. And they went out to the world to give witness to that, apostolic witness to the truth of the resurrection and what Christ had taught and what Christ had said. And so we stand on the witness of the apostles, those who were right there and saw Christ. That's the tradition we've kept. That's the scriptures we've kept. That's the stories that we have kept alive. And it's interesting when you start diving into, there's a book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict that talks about the resurrection and the effect that it had on these apostles. And that you get like, the 12 of them going to far corners of the world, and 11 of them were martyred for the faith. And at no point, even when they were far away from each other, they had no way of communicating with each other. There wasn't, there weren't these things that they could talk with each other or do anything, that not a single one of them at any moment ever for a second flinched, no matter what the torture was they were going through, and said, "You're right, I'm lying. I didn't actually see it. I didn't make it up." They all stayed true to that story of the risen Jesus until they died, right through their execution. So we have this story of, like I said, this apostolic witness, these guys who saw and encountered the risen Christ, who then gave their lives to make sure that story endured. So that's how we hold on to, this is the fullness of revelation. This is what God really came to reveal. There are other religions where the religious leaders will say things like, the founding members will say, I've come to show you the way to the truth. I've come to show you the light. I've come to show you whatever. Whereas Jesus says, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the light. There's just some really powerful things present in Christianity and in Catholicism that you don't find in other faiths that have really withstood the test of time and track for us. Yeah.
So I have a question, Mark, just to kind of come on. Sorry, Ashley, partly because I have kids your age too. Is it like a lot of these teens that are in the confirmation room right now? We all have friends, and I have friends that are of different religions, and so there's.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, and so it's the how do yes, we can be strong in our faith, and still how do we be respectful and even curious about somebody else's faith, and help what do you suggest to the teens?
Well, those are some of the most amazing conversations to have, right? With other people, to find out what they believe and why they believe it. And I want to say at like high theological levels, at high level of theology, we got, theologians who are having conversations for their life. That's where you find some significant differences in understandings of things. But among folks like us, you'll begin to discover that in many of these faiths, a lot of the basic tenets and basic teachings are the same. The little poem or the little Kabir reflection that I talked about, I felt in need of a great pilgrimage, so I stayed in place for 3 days and God came to me. That's not a Catholic or a Christian writer. That's another faith from the Middle East, but it speaks such a profound truth that cuts across faiths, right? I mean, that's going to be exactly my experience. That's my experience in the past. That'll be my experience next week with God. So there's those conversations are beautiful to have, and like I say, our faith is at least open to the fact that God moves in these other faiths as well, calling people to Himself. Absolutely. Even St. Paul talks about, I think it's in Romans, where he talks about people who have never met Jesus, never had the chance to be introduced to Jesus, never heard about Jesus, or maybe in another faith. But if they act in accordance with the law that is in their heart, that God has placed within our hearts, then God is moving with them. That call to love neighbor, that call to care for one another, that call to be there for each other. So for many, many years, I did a homily, and it's not too long ago. I can actually find the references for you and get them to you guys. But for many years, the Catholic Church, it was Catholic in order to go to heaven. Nobody else gets there, right? I mean, it was Catholic only. And with the Second Vatican Council, the Church realized that's probably not true, actually. That God works beyond the Catholic faith, although we believe that we do have the fullness of revelation that God's ever presented to the world. And if we cling to that and follow that, we're in good stead. Maria wants to know, we got to grab a question off of Facebook here. Are we going to know relatives when we die? I want to see my son and my family. In our tradition, yes. I mean, many of the prayers that we use at funerals talks about when we will see our family and friends and be united with them in God's kingdom. So yes, we very much have that experience and that belief. And again, some people I know who have had that moment say, yeah, they see those who they love who've gone before them. So like I say, we don't lose our identity. I think we will encounter our family and friends. I mean, I'm counting on it myself. Another thing I just want to throw out there as an observation is when we do get to heaven, we don't become angels. An angel is a whole other kind of being. There's angels, there's human beings, there's giraffes, and we don't become another type of being. We are humans and human souls, and so there are angels, no doubt about it, but they're not human beings who get wings and put on a halo and then start to flutter about. God created us to be human, and so yes, we'll be with our fellow human beings, the angels and the saints, as we say. The saints are the human beings who've made it.
Well, thank you
Sorry,
so
I
much.
got spun off there.
Yeah, for all of those answers. Those were all great answers. I think the one that really spoke to me the most was the fact that was Katie's question, saying that how we can respect all these religions, especially because I have a lot of friends from different religions, and I think it's interesting. It's because even I think a good example is that the Old Testament is shared between many different religions, and so it kind of just proves that we're all connected, even though we have slightly different traditions, or we believe in different or we support different prophets. I think, but in reality, they're all at the same. It's all at the same thing, that we're serving God, and we're at the end goal at trying to reach, I guess, what heaven is in different different religions.
And and our faith teaches us that that's the common vocation we all have, no matter where we are in our life. Excuse me. Our common vocation is holiness. Our common vocation is to become saints. My particular path for that God has called me to is to be a priest. For some people, the particular path is to be a nun or a brother, or to live single, or to be married. But they're paths that are meant for us so that we've got the best shot to be holy and make it to heaven and become saints forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna switch right now.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Ashley. Awesome.
Next, we're bringing up Joe so that he gets a chance to ask some questions.
Hey, Joe.
Switching as we go. Come on up.
Sure.
These have been great questions.
Now tonight, I'm thinking, but that's fine. This is awesome. Hey, Joe.
Joe.
Hello, Brother Mark. Hi.
Good to see you. I like your CCOP math. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm actually relatively new to the Catholic community. And,
I know you are.
Yeah. And I'm just really thankful that you're here to answer these questions. So my first question is, if you're not Catholic, do you go to hell? I have a lot of friends and family who aren't Catholic, and I know they're good people. So if they don't believe in God as we do, will they go to hell?
You don't automatically go to hell, no. I mean, God's not that nasty. I would just say it that way. As I talked about, Paul in Romans talks about people who have never had the opportunity to meet Christ, but still live with that sort of law that God plants within their hearts. So even Paul was recognizing that there are people who God moves to and moves with and through and for, calling them to Himself in ways that they can perceive it. It's interesting that you posed the question the way you wanted, because while the church teaches there's a hell, yes, but it doesn't teach that anybody is there. The church has never ever taught this individual has been damned. That's up to God. We have proclaimed people are in heaven. Those are the saints, as we were talking about. But the church has never said, here's an individual and they are definitely in hell. Because we never know how God moves with them, and how even up to the last moment of their life, they might make a decision for God. They might make a decision for Christ. They might, repent and find the way to heaven at the last split second. So there's no way we can say, here's a category of people that are definitely going to hell. We don't know what happens between them and God and their relationship with God. The church warns us very carefully about not judging people. Now, when we say that, what we're saying is we don't judge the state of someone's soul before God. I think we can definitely judge some actions, right? You murder someone, we can judge that action is not holy. You lie, you do this, you do the other thing. We can judge that's not a good choice. But we can never judge the condition of someone's soul before God, because that's between God and that person, and we just don't know. So we can't say, here's a group of people or here's an individual that's going to hell. We don't know that. We might say, the signs aren't good, but we don't know that for sure.
All right, thank you very much. That was a great answer to the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So my second question
Doing okay.
is,
well, I'm just gonna say one thing on that, Joe. That there was actually a clip, and I'll see if I can find it. Maybe Michael can put it up there somewhere, of Pope Francis talking to a young boy whose father had died and was an atheist. It'll make you cry. Just heads up.
Yeah.
And the young boy was worried that his dad wasn't going to be in heaven. And Pope Francis told him that his father was a good man and loved his son, and he would be in heaven. Again, I can't even talk about it because it was just like so emotional. But this little boy talking to Pope Francis. So if Pope Francis says we're good, right, then I'm kind of in alignment with that.
Well, and I think sometimes we make the mistake of thinking it's incredibly difficult to get to heaven. God's made it as simple as possible and has really reached out to give us access. I mean, Jesus Jesus only talks about the last judgment in one place, when he talks about, here's what's going to happen on the last day, when the Son of Man will come in all his glory with the angels with him, and he'll assemble the nations and divide them. You know the story, sheep and goats, right? And what's the difference between a sheep and a goat? A sheep gave a cup of cold water to someone who's thirsty. Come on into heaven. That's it. It's that easy, that you simply do something that small to end somebody's suffering in the world a little bit, and you're heading for heaven. Why we make it a whole lot more complicated than that, I'm not sure. I honestly believe that once you really encounter Christ and have a real experience of him and get to know him, then everything else that we do, and whether it's confession or the Eucharist or the other sacraments or the social justice we teach and the work we do, it all falls out of that amazing living relationship with him. It all starts to make sense, and suddenly you want to give water to everybody. It just flows right out of you. Sorry, Kate and I get launched. You're just got to get used to it, Joe.
Sorry, Joe.
All right, no problem. My second question is, if we're all God's children made in his image, why do so many people hate each other?
That's really awesome. You've probably never noticed, but in the church, in that book that I read from, that the prayers come from all the time, we pray for unity constantly. It's one of the things that we believe is the greatest sign of God's presence among us, is that we live in unity as God does. Father, Son, Spirit, 3 in 1, perfect unity going on there, perfect love happening there. Why do we hate each other? Because we as human beings, I mean, you could talk to psychologists and people who study human behavior far more than I do about these things, but we seem to love finding the differences between us and not celebrating those differences. We see them as threatening, or we see them as making someone less than us, or we see them as making someone better than us. And we as human beings tend to act a lot out of fear more than love. We choose fear a lot. And I think that's why, 365 times in the Bible, God says, do not be afraid. Because fear so throws us off of who we are and what we're called to be, that we make choices that deny the fact that we are one family in God, and that we all reflect something of God, that each of us uniquely brings something of God to the earth, in the way that we're created, in the gifts that we're given, in the talents entrusted to us. And when we deny those gifts or talents, we deny the God. When we don't share them, we don't share with the world the part of God that we bring to the world, and that's a great loss. But it's fear. It's fear. We fear each other, and so we end up not treating each other well, out of self-preservation, maybe something along those lines. I'm guessing.
I have a comment.
Go.
Because I think about siblings, right? If you think about siblings, right, that, how many of us have gotten angry and frustrated with siblings and family members and right? Even though we're part of the same family, there's still those frustrations and anger and you did this and it's 100% right. If Mark talks about God and fear. Well, if God is love, right, and fear is the absence of love, right, and fear is when we make mistakes. I mean, raise your hand if you've ever made an amazing decision out of fear. No one ever, right? Right? We make our best decisions out of love and faith, not out of fear and desperation. And so when we move away from God being love, and we create is when we make those mistakes that are outside of what we're called. And Jesus says, all right, you're forgiven. Come back.
Try again.
And try again. And that's the thing about, again, be not afraid. Like, come back. It's okay. It's okay. Right. I know you screwed up. Come back anyway. But I think if you think about siblings that we fight amongst each other, family members, and if we're part of this larger, and we've also seen experiences, whether it's social media, YouTube, just even walking down the street, of humans helping humans connecting with complete strangers. I see the best place to see that is at the airport. I see strangers helping strangers at the airport all the time. And it reminds me that we do see God in each other. We do see that love and faith amongst each other. But I think sometimes it's your brain is like a Google machine, right? Whatever you want to put into the Google bar is what comes out. So if you say, today I'm going to go and look for random acts of kindness and watch other people, you're more likely to see that than, man, everybody is angry with each other. Well, then you're going to go find that too. So, but I think God is love. And when we move away from that, we move into fear. And that's where we get in trouble. And that's when we got to go back. Like, you go back to your parents. Sorry, Mom, I was fighting with my brother. Sorry, sorry, Dad, I was fighting with my sister. And it's all right, come back. It's okay. All right, we'll work it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I think the world would be like a lot of a better place if we all just acknowledged and accepted the love that God has shared with us.
You're right. Absolutely.
Get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
The heck?
All right.
What, Lynn T, does it got a band for that? Can we get like some sort of bracelet?
I'll make some.
On a bracelet?
Should.
Good idea.
Joe says.
All right. My next question is, does God truly forgive us for everything if we are truly sorry? And how do we know if we are truly sorry?
Awesome question.
Wait, clarifying question. How do we know when we're really sorry, or how do we know when we're forgiven?
You know what? I'm going to clarify this because I actually talked to the team that submitted this. So they said they feel like we give them the examination of conscience and then they go, oh, I didn't know that was wrong. Okay, I'll go confess to that. Okay. So they want to know, like, at what point, like, are we still forgiven even if we don't understand we were supposed to be sorry?
Got it.
Does that make more sense?
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things to answer. Start with yes. Anything we do that is wrong, God forgives if we're truly sorry for it and want to do better. When you come to confession, after we've had some time to talk, the confession ends with the person making the confession praying what's called an act of contrition. And in the act of contrition, I mean, you can Google them up. There's a zillion of them out there. There's always a couple things that are present in them. And those two things are, one, I'm sorry for having done wrong. And two, I intend to do better. And if those two things are there and sincerely meant, then in confession, forgiveness happens. Sin is forgiven. Even sins that you might have forgotten about and failed to mention. As long as you're not deliberately hiding sin, if you just happen to forget something, right? Like, whatever, it's forgiven. We believe that God recognizes you are truly trying to do better. You truly want to improve the way you're living in the world. You truly want to be more like his son, more of his daughter, live a holier life. He gives you the clean start. He gives you the fresh start. And just for the team who wrote the question, for your knowledge, you will find throughout your life, because this is still a reality in my life, that when you continue your journey with God and with Christ, they will, in time, reveal to you areas in your life even when you're pushing 40, even when you're pushing 50 and beyond, areas that you need to grow, where you're like, wait a minute, I was just doing that for 40 years and I never had an inkling that was wrong. God and God's timing, when you're ready for it, will let you know. And usually those moments really cut to the heart. Like you feel it. You're like, oh, if I had only known 40 years ago, I would have not, but the timing wasn't right. You weren't in the place to learn it. You weren't mature enough to understand it. You didn't have the sensitivity, right? Those things come, and as you continue your spiritual journey, as you grow in holiness, things that used to never bother you now do bother you, because you recognize this is beginning to step me away from God. So one of the ways to know you're forgiven is if you really have a sense of what's called contrition. You're like, oh man, I didn't know. I feel really poorly about this. I messed up. I wasn't aware I was messing up, but I see now the harm I did or the damage I did or how I didn't live how God wanted me to live. And that's a great sign that the Spirit's moving and God's calling you to have another new beginning through the sacrament of confession and through the forgiveness He offers us. So there's never a question about the great story in the scriptures that is about God's mercy and reconciliation. Of course, the prodigal son, Luke 18, I think it is, and that's a story that we could spend a whole lot of time on. But God forgives every sin in His mercy as long as we're willing to repent and try to do better. To say I'm sorry and I want to do better. The question of His forgiveness is not a question at all.
Yeah.
Katie's a big confession advocate.
I'm a confession convert, I have to admit. I was one of those when I was a teen and even into, I probably not until in my 40s that I really started to get it about confession. That I was like, why do I need to go to a priest to confess? I can say the prayers to my God and I'm good. I put the check in the block. And then I started to have some experiences with confession that were very powerful, and there's something valuable to me. And I know we've talked about confession on this before, but I was looking up the act of contrition as you were saying, and there are different variations on the theme of active contrition, but
yeah.
And I know, and I am the worst about memorizing the act of contrition, by the way. Like, right, Mark? The worst.
I'm gonna make it your penance one day. Your penance is gonna be you have to learn the act of contrition.
Shh. You're not supposed to talk about things that happen in the confessional, Mark.
Well, that hasn't happened in the confessional.
So I think that knowing what you didn't know, right? Like I didn't think about, or even like I did know it was wrong and I did it anyway, right? And now it's hit me that okay, that was really wrong. I was
being belligerent.
Right.
I was being belligerent.
I was being, I mean, I think the last one I said to you, Mark, is I was really mean to somebody. And I knew it in the moment. I knew what I was doing was mean and hurtful. And I knew it. And I didn't care in the moment. And then I was like, maybe I need to go to confession for that. That's really not the person that God is calling me to be. And I had a moment where I wasn't in alignment with the kind of person I've been asked to be.
And you know you can be.
Most of the time.
I believe in a better Katie than Katie knows.
With all of us. You have faith in all of us. I'm so glad, Mark.
I do. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. More Joe.
Yeah. I just want to say that I feel like God is always ready to accept us, to forgive us. But like we also have to be ready to accept God and like forgive ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the story of the prodigal son, and one of the amazing parts about that story is the prodigal son doesn't even make it home, doesn't even get to say the speech he's prepared. The father is there hugging him, cutting him off. It's been said, all you have to do is really turn around and God's right there. He's like, hello, I'm right here. You know, you just have to bother to look for him and take that step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father Mark. That was all my questions.
Oh, awesome.
Well, I mean, we have dozens more, but I do have one more person here that wants to ask a few more questions or just.
Sure. And I mean, I've already realized we're going to have to do another one of these maybe in another night like this, maybe
This
in
is
November.
fun. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Dom came all the way here with his crutches from Livermore, though. So I said, at least ask one question.
What happened? What happened? What happened?
Yeah, what happened, Dom?
Dude, what's the story? What happened to you?
I was playing a soccer game and fell.
Did you make the play? I mean, was it spectacular?
No, they scored.
We
I guess
appreciate
if
your
we're
honesty.
talking about confession, I shouldn't tell you to lie about it, should I?
We appreciate your honesty.
honesty.
Okay, good. All right. So yes, yeah, but thank you for coming all the way from Livermore on your crutches.
Yeah.
Oh wait, one more question. Did you flop? Was it spectacular when you were flopping on the ground and all of that, like the flopping and all of
Grabbing
that?
your shins, rolling around.
No, I just kind of laid there.
I laid there. They scored. That's the story.
Yeah.
And we move
I
on to
love
another
it.
day. We move on to another
I
day.
love it. Good.
Alrighty.
All right.
My
So what have you got for us?
All right. The question I got here is, why did Jesus Christ rise on the third day? Like, why not like the fourth day or in 2 weeks? Why was it the third day?
It's funny you say that because every year when we get to what we call the Triduum, 3 days is what that means of Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Vigil. I always say that the resurrection of Christ is going to be the death of me, because those 3 days, which are the 3 most important days in our liturgical year, there's so much to do. And I always tell people, if he would have said, destroy this temple and I will raise it up in 3 months, that still would have been very impressive and would have given me a lot more time to work. But no, overachieving Son of God that he is, it had to be 3 days. I'm not sure we really know why the 3-day thing mattered. There's a lot of images of 3 in the scriptures. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, in the way that the days are counted from sunset to sunset, we don't even have 3 full days that we recall those things on. Right? He died Friday afternoon and rose on Sunday morning. Is what we hold. But that's a question that I can do some research on and find out why, in particular, God chose 3 days for that. What the significance of that was, because I know when it comes to the story of Lazarus, who Jesus brought back to life, Lazarus wasn't resurrected. He was resuscitated, if you will, but that Jesus waited 4 days because there was something about the thought that the spirit of the individual floated around for 4 days, and by 4 days they were definitely dead. So I'm sure there's a reason for the 3. Couldn't tell you exactly what that is sitting here this evening at this moment, but I can find that out and do some research and see if there is a reason out there for it.
Wasn't there something about doing the burial, the perfumes after certain days and things like that?
Well, they had to come do it on that Easter Sunday morning because Jesus was killed on the Passover, right? That moment when the Jewish people were celebrating God saving them from slavery in Egypt. And so, especially in John's gospel, makes it very clear that Jesus dies at exactly the same time that the Passover lamb would have been being slain in the temple. So there's that thing. So, and since it was the Passover and a holy day, they weren't able to do all the burial preparations they would normally do, which is why they returned the next morning with the bombs and the perfumes and find the tomb open. So that's the timing around that. But the 3-day thing is a great. I'm sure there's a reason, and my mind knows there is, and I can't grasp it at the moment. I'll find that out for you, Dom. Right. By the time your leg is healed, we will have an answer.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So good. Did you have another one?
I could have another one. Alrighty. The next question is, seated at the right hand of the Father, does that mean they are just sitting there waiting to judge us? I know we ultimately judge ourselves, but are they just sitting there waiting for us?
Seated at the right hand of the Father is a phrase we use to reflect upon the sort of the honored position that Christ has. In the ancient world, to be seated at the right hand of the king, you were the hand of the king, right? You were second authority. And so it's It's more a phrase that evokes for us an image of Jesus' authority and the position of honor that he possesses, more than sitting there waiting to judge us. In all honesty, we know that Christ and God and the Spirit, wherever you get one, you get all three of them, are at work in the world every day. In the way we live, in the way we move, in the way we breathe, in the sacraments where we call down the power of the Spirit to be with us, in the kindness we show to one another. In all those moments, God is present and working with us. He's not just sitting in heaven waiting for us to show up. He's working with us, helping to get us there. So in each moment of our life, if we're aware of it and cooperate with the grace that is present, God is present, working with us in his Son, in the Spirit that was left to us, promised to us. The Spirit that we'll be celebrating when you guys get confirmed. Yeah. How's that for a nice button on the end of the evening?
Yeah.
That sounds good. But this has been awesome, and I know we're at like 8:16.
Yeah, I know we went way over, but I was just thinking this was the original idea for In Lieu of the Pew. That you had told me a year and a half ago that like we kind of had questions coming in from the confirmation team, and they were, it's kind of that you would do it when you would go and spend time with the confirmation group. And could we create something like this? And so to see it actually happen, that you guys are doing these questions formatted and anonymously asking questions is awesome. And I want to do more of these. These are awesome.
Yeah, and obviously, if we have how many questions in T? 12,000.
200 just from
200.
half of the kids, though. We haven't even asked the year one kids.
Half of the kids, not from year one. So we can continue to do this. That's not a problem. Just while I'm thinking about it, 2 weeks from now is November 3rd. We will not have In Lieu of the Pew that evening. Instead, we'll be doing our Mass of Remembrance at St. Augustine Church, 7 o'clock in the evening, where we pray for and remember all of our faithful departed, as we do throughout the month of November, but in a very special way. We do that Mass. We hope everybody watching can join us at that Mass, and you're welcome to bring a picture of someone who has passed away who you want to pray for that evening. If you're not able to join us in person, the Mass will be online. So instead of In Lieu of the Pew, you'll be able to watch the Mass of Remembrance on November 3rd. So Kate and I will be back for the next In Lieu of the Pew on November 4. Or no, November 10. November 10.
In Vegas.
November 10 in Vegas. And our guest will be Matt Gray, and one of those who have gone through the RCIA process. And then beyond that, we don't have anybody planned as guests. So maybe when we close Thanksgiving, or maybe in early December, we can have you guys back and continue. I've loved this tonight. I love this.
Me too. So this was fun.
It'll be great. But I know folks got to get home, got to get some sleep. There's school tomorrow. There's church tomorrow. There's all that stuff we need to worry about. and Katie has to get some dinner because of what time is it there, Katie?
Dinner, right? Exactly.
4:05 in Hawaii. So, so thank you guys for being with us. Thank you all of you who are watching and joining us. We appreciate all the comments, all the support. It's obvious several people said this is the best In Lieu of the Pew ever tonight. So this is awesome.
It's all the teams.
And we'll make this happen again. So thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Katie, for coming. Thank you, Lynn T, and confirmation students. Love you guys. Thank you, Michael, for making this happen tonight. Back there doing all the tech stuff for us. We love you all. Hope to see you soon. Like I say, I won't see much of you next week because I'll be just running away with God and hiding out for 4 or 5 days. But I'll be back and doing the 10 o'clock in the noon Mass on Halloween. As a matter of fact, Halloween's a Sunday this year, so we'll see you then. All right. God bless. Take care. Good night.